Roots of chance. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the winding coastal road as Amara Patel squinted at her GPS. The rental car's air conditioning struggled against the Mediterranean heat, and she tugged at her collar, wondering if her university-approved budget couldn't have stretched to a vehicle manufactured in the current decade. In 300 meters, turn right, chirped the electronic voice, just as the road ahead split between a well-paved highway and a narrow dirt path leading toward a cluster of whitewashed buildings nestled among silver-green olive groves. Amara hesitated, then followed the dirt road. The University of California's agricultural extension program had sent her halfway across the world to this small Spanish village with a simple mission: study the drought-resistant olive cultivation, techniques that had somehow thrived here despite 3 years of unprecedented water scarcity. Her department head had called it a career-making research opportunity. Looking at the modest village ahead, Amara wondered if career-ending isolation might be more accurate. The car jolted over a rut, sending her collection of soil sampling equipment clattering in the trunk. Amara grimaced. 6 months in this village suddenly seemed interminable. She parked beside a small square dominated by an ancient stone fountain. Several elderly men playing dominoes at a cafe table paused to observe her arrival with undisguised interest. A weathered sign reading Pension Flores hung from a nearby building, her home for the foreseeable future. As Amara gathered her bags, a voice called out in accented English, "You must be the American scientist." She turned to find a woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and a warm smile approaching. "Sir, that's me, Dr. Amara Patel," she replied, extending her hand. "I'm here for the olive cultivation research." "Carmela Flores," the woman replied, clasping Amara's hand between both of hers. "Welcome to Valdeolivos, boss. Your room is ready, and there is cold soup waiting. You must be hungry after such a journey." Before Amara could respond, a commotion at the edge of the square drew their attention. A tractor had arrived pulling a trailer loaded with wooden crates. The driver, man with sun-browned skin and dark curls, jumped down and began unloading the crates with efficient movements. "Perfect timing. Saeed, Carmela, Nicola, come meet our American guest." The man looked up, wiped his hands on well-worn jeans, and approached with an unhurried gait. As he drew closer, Amara noticed detailed laugh lines around warm brown eyes, a thoughtful set to his mouth, hands that spoke of practical work rather than theory. "Nicholas Varela," he introduced himself simply, with a slight bow of his head. "You're here for the drought study?" "Yes," Amara replied, surprised by his directness. "I'm researching adaptive cultivation methods in water-stressed environments." Nicholas nodded, his expression thoughtful. "The university sent someone at last." "Good. We've lost too many trees already." "You're familiar with my research project?" Amara asked, momentarily confused. A subtle smile crossed his face. "I read agricultural journals, and your paper on root system adaptability in arid conditions was enlightening." Amara blinked in surprise. Local farmers rarely followed academic publications, let alone remembered specific authors. "Nicholas knows every olive tree in the valley by name," Carmela explained with obvious pride. "If anyone can help your research, it's him." "I'd be grateful for any assistance," Amara said carefully, suddenly aware she might have underestimated this place and this man. "Tomorrow then," Nicholas said, "I'll show you the experimental groves, the ones where we're testing the new irrigation systems." As he turned to leave, Amara called after him, "Do you work for the agricultural cooperative?" Nicolas said something unreadable flickering across his expression. "No," he said simply, "I just tend the trees." With a nod, he returned to his tractor. Later that evening, as Amara unpacked her equipment in her modest room, she found herself reflecting on the encounter. Nicholas Varela was an enigma farmer who read research papers, who spoke of experimental groves with the casual confidence of someone deeply familiar with scientific methodology. Through her open window, she could see the silver leaves of distant olive trees shimmering in the fading light, ancient and enduring. Perhaps, she thought, there was more to discover in Valdeolivos than drought-resistant cultivation techniques. Amara opened her laptop and began a new document. At the top she typed field notes. Day 1. The olive groves hold secrets, and so, I suspect, do their keepers. Wisdom in the soil. The morning broke with golden light spilling across Valdeolivos, catching on the dew that clung to the silver-green olive leaves. Amara woke early, eager to begin her work despite the lingering fatigue from travel. She dressed practically in light khakis and a breathable shirt, applied sunscreen liberally, and packed her field kit with meticulous care. Carmela provided a simple breakfast of crusty bread, local cheese, and strong coffee. "Nicholas will meet you by the fountain at 7, she informed Amara, pouring more coffee into her cup without asking. "He rises with the sun." True to Carmela's word, Nicholas was waiting when Amara arrived at the village square, leaning against an old but well-maintained pickup truck. He wore the same work clothes as yesterday: faded jeans, boots with visible wear, a simple button-up shirt with sleeves rolled to the elbows. Nothing about him suggested anything other than a hard-working local farmer. "Buenos dias," he greeted Heir, opening T passenger door, ready to meet the trees. The drive took them beyond the village, climbing narrow roads that wound through increasingly parched hillsides. Nicholas drove with the easy confidence of someone who knew every curve and dip in the road. This region has always been dry, he explained as they traveled, but the past 3 years have been unprecedented. The aquifer levels are dropping, and many farmers have abandoned their groves, yet yours are thriving, Amara observed. Noting the contrast between the withered trees they passed and the vibrant groves that came into view as they crested a hill, Nicholas's expression softened with pride. These trees have survived for centuries, some are over 1,000 years old. They've seen droughts before. The secret is understanding how they've adapted naturally. He parked beside a small stone building that Amara recognized as a traditional tool shed. Beyond it stretched hectares of olive trees arranged in neat rows, their silvery leaves shimmering in the morning light. This is the experimental section, Nicholas explained as they walked among the trees. We're testing different irrigation systems, soil amendments, and pruning techniques. Amara asked, noting his choice of words. The village cooperative, he replied smoothly. Everyone contributes what they can. For the next several hours, Nicholas guided Amara through the groves, showing her innovative water conservation systems, some ancient, others surprisingly modern. He explained each technique with the precision of an engineer and the reverence of a poet. Amara took samples, made measurements, and filled pages of her notebook with observations. This root system adaptation is remarkable, she murmured, examining soil particles clinging to her probe. I've never seen this pattern in commercial groves. Commercial groves focus on short-term yields, Nicholas replied, kneeling beside her. Their shoulders nearly touched as he pointed to the soil structure. These trees are thinking in centuries, not quarters. Amara glanced at him, struck by his phrasing. That's a surprisingly philosophical way for a farmer to look at agriculture. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. Perhaps farmers should be more philosophical, and philosophers should get their hands dirty more often. As midday approached, they settled in the shade of a particularly ancient olive tree. Nicholas produced a simple lunch from his backpack: local bread, cheese, olives, and a thermos of cool water. They ate in companionable silence, looking out over the valley below. How did you learn all this? Amara finally asked. Your techniques combine traditional methods with advanced agricultural science. That's unusual. Nicholas was quiet for a moment. My grandfather taught me the old ways, he said at last. The rest, I observe, I read, I experiment. Before she could press further, his phone rang. Nicholas checked the screen and frowned. Excuse me, I need to take this. He walked several paces away, speaking in rapid Spanish that Amara couldn't quite follow. His posture had changed, straighter, more formal, and he gestured with his free hand in a way that suggested he was explaining something complex. The conversation ended with what sounded like firm instructions. When he returned, something in his demeanor had shifted subtly. We should continue, he said, more businesslike than before. There's much to see before sunset. Throughout the afternoon they continued their work, but Amara noticed new details: how Nicholas occasionally checked his phone, the way his knowledge extended beyond farming to market economics and global agricultural trends, how he sometimes slipped into using technical terminology that seemed out of place for a village farmer. As they drove back to the village, a sleek black car passed them, going the opposite direction, an expensive model that seemed utterly out of place on the dusty rural roads. Tourists? Amara asked. Investors, Nicholas replied after a brief hesitation. Some people see opportunity in crisis. They buy land from farmers who can no longer afford to maintain their groves. And what do you think about that? His hands tightened on the steering wheel. I think the land belongs to those who understand it, not those who merely exploit it. When they reached the village, the sun was setting, painting the whitewashed buildings in shades of gold and rose. Nicholas stopped the truck beside the fountain. The same time tomorrow? Amara asked as she gathered her samples and notes. He nodded. Tomorrow we'll see the north slopes. They present different challenges. As Amara walked back to the pension, she found herself thinking less about soil samples and more about the contradictions of Nicholas Varela, a man who claimed to be a simple farmer yet spoke with the knowledge of a scientist and the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. That evening, as she organized her day's findings, Amara opened her laptop and searched for Varela olive farming Spain. The results showed nothing unusual: small mentions of regional agricultural cooperatives, local festival announcements. Nothing to explain the mystery that was beginning to form around the man who was becoming not just her research guide, but, she realized with a small start, someone she looked forward to seeing each morning. She added to her field notes. The more I learn about the olive groves, the more questions I have about their keeper, like the ancient trees themselves. Nicholas Varela appears simple on the surface but reveals complexity upon closer examination. Harvests and truths. The village of Valdeolivos transformed itself for the annual harvest festival. Colorful banners stretched between buildings, and strings of lights crisscrossed the central square. After 3 weeks of field work with Nicholas, Amara had made significant progress on her research while also becoming integrated into village life. Carmela had insisted she attend the festival, promising it would show her the soul of the olive culture. Amara wore a simple sundress, a departure from her usual field attire, and felt a flutter of anticipation at seeing Nicholas outside of their work context. Their daily collaborations had evolved into something that felt increasingly personal, shared jokes, lingering conversations, and a growing awareness of each other that extended beyond academic interest. The festival was already underway when she arrived. Children ran between food stalls, elderly couples danced to traditional music, and the air smelled of roasting meats and sweet pastries. Amara accepted a glass of local wine from a smiling vendor and wandered through the celebration, searching for a familiar face. "He's not here yet." Carmela appeared beside her, following her gaze. "Nicholas always comes late to festivals." Amara felt her cheeks warm. "I wasn't specifically, of course not," Carmela interrupted with a knowing smile. "But when he arrives, it will be ... interesting." Before Amara could question her further, the music stopped. The crowd's attention turned toward the village entrance, where 3 black luxury vehicles had arrived. From the lead car emerged an elegant older couple, followed by a group of well-dressed individuals who were clearly not local villagers, and then, stepping from the second vehicle was Nicholas, but not the Nicholas she knew. This man wore a tailored suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. His hair was styled rather than windblown, his usual stubble replaced by a clean shave. He moved with the same grace but with a new authority that commanded attention. "Who are they?" Amara asked Carmela, her voice barely audible. "The Santiago family," Carmela replied. "Owners of Santiago the largest agricultural corporation in Spain." She paused, watching Amara's expression carefully. "And that is Nicholas Varela Santiago, their heir and chief innovation officer." The revelation hit Amara like a physical blow. Nicholas, her humble, knowledgeable farmer, was actually the scion of an agricultural empire. The company name was familiar from her research. Santiago Agronomics controlled vast farmlands across Spain and exported globally. As if sensing her gaze, Nicholas looked up and saw her. Something flickered across his face, regret perhaps, or resignation. He excused himself from his companions and made his way toward her through the parting crowd. "Amara," he said simply when he reached her. Gone was the casual warmth of their daily interactions, replaced by a formality that felt like a wall between them. "Senna Santiago," she replied, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "Or do you prefer Varela when you're playing farmer?" He winced. "I should have told you." "Yes, you should have." Anger and hurt mingled inside her. 3 weeks, Nicholas. 3 weeks of me sharing my research, my ideas, thinking I was helping a struggling community when all along you were what? Gathering intelligence for your corporation. "It wasn't like that," he began, but was interrupted by an older man, his father, judging by the resemblance, calling him to join some apparent business associates. "I need to explain," Nicholas said urgently. "Meet me at the old mill at midnight." Before she could respond, he was pulled away into a circle of suits and cocktail dresses, a world apart from the dusty fields where they had spent their days. Amara retreated from the festival, ignoring Carmela's concerned glance. Back in her room, she paced furiously, trying to make sense of what she'd learned. Had everything been a deception? The humble farmer act. His interest in her research was it all corporate espionage dressed up as rural charm. At 11:55, against her better judgment, she found herself walking toward the old stone mill that stood at the edge of the village. Nicholas was already there, back in his familiar work clothes, sitting on a low stone wall. She demanded without preamble. Nicholas looked up, his expression unguarded in the moonlight. "The simplest answer is that I needed to remember why I do what I do." "And what is it that you do, exactly?" Amara crossed her arms. "Besides deceiving visiting researchers, I'm trying to save traditional farming while modernizing agricultural practices," he said quietly. "Santiago Agronomics has resources, influence, but it's become disconnected from the soil, from the people who live by it." He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling its corporate neatness. "I come to Valdiolivos to work with my hands, to remember what matters. You could have told me the truth. Would you have treated me the same if you'd known? Shared your real thoughts? Challenged my ideas?" He stood, closing the distance between them slightly. "With most people, once they know my family name, I stop being Nicholas and become Santiago Agronomics." Amara wanted to hold on to her anger, but it was slipping through her fingers. "That doesn't justify lying." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." In the silence that followed, Amara realized that despite her sense of betrayal, she missed the easy companionship they had shared among the olive trees. "I'm returning to California next week," she said finally. "My research period is ending." Something like pain crossed his features. "I understand." He reached into his pocket and handed her a business card, simple white cardstock with just his name and contact information. "If you ever want to discuss your findings, or anything else." Amara took the card but didn't reply. As she walked away, she felt as though something precious had slipped through her fingers, something that had been growing as steadily and quietly as the ancient olive trees they had tended together. Seeds of forgiveness. The university campus in California felt sterile after Valdiolivos, all concrete and glass, lacking the organic connection to the land that had surrounded her in Spain. For 2 months, Amara immersed herself in analyzing her samples and writing her preliminary findings, trying to focus solely on the science and not on memories of sun-dappled conversations. Under ancient trees, Nicholas's business card remained untouched in her desk drawer, though she often found herself staring at it when concentration failed her. "You've been distracted since Spain," observed her colleague Priscia during a late-night lab session. "Your work is brilliant as always, but your single quotes elsewhere." Amara sighed. "It's complicated. It usually is when that expression crosses someone's face," Priscia replied knowingly. "Does it have anything to do with the Santiago agronomics people who've been emailing the department head?" Amara's head snapped up. "What emails?" "They're interested in funding an extension of your research, something about implementing your drought resistance protocols across their olive estates." Priscia raised an eyebrow. "You didn't know?" That evening, Amara searched online for recent news about Santiago Agri. What she found surprised her. The company had announced a major shift toward sustainable farming practices, with particular emphasis on water conservation techniques in their olive production. The press release quoted Nicholas directly. "Our approach integrates traditional wisdom with cutting-edge research, including valuable contributions from international scholars." He had implemented her research recommendations, not stolen them, acknowledged and implemented them. Further searching revealed more. Santiago Agronomics had established a fund to help small farmers maintain their land rather than selling to developers, was transitioning their production to organic methods, and had launched a training program for young agriculturists. All initiatives that aligned with concerns Amara had expressed during their conversations. Among the olive trees. The realization that Nicholas had been really listening to her ideas settled over her like gentle rain on parched soil. Perhaps his deception about his identity hadn't been about corporate espionage, but about something more human, the desire to be seen for himself rather than for his family name and wealth. 3 days later, an invitation arrived in Amara's University Milan Agricultural Sustainability Conference in Barcelona, with her name on the speakers list. She hadn't applied to present. The sponsor was listed as the Santiago Foundation for Agricultural Preservation. After a week of deliberation, she accepted. Grafting to worlds. The conference center in Barcelona buzzed with activity. Scientists, industry representatives, and agricultural advocates from around the world gathered to discuss sustainable farming in an era of climate uncertainty. Amara's presentation on olive cultivation in drought conditions was scheduled for the second day, and she had deliberately avoided checking if certain names appeared on the attendee list. Her talk was well received, with particular interest in her findings about how ancient cultivation techniques could be integrated with modern technology. As she concluded and thanked the audience, a familiar figure rose from the back row. Nicholas, dressed in a balance of professional and practical. Neither the farmer's simple clothes nor the corporate heir's formal suit. He didn't approach immediately. Instead, he waited until the crowd around her had dissipated, standing at a respectful distance until she acknowledged him with a nod. "Your research is exceptional," he said simply. "You've validated what the old farmers have known intuitively for generations, but with data that can convince even the most profit-focused board members. Is that why you arranged for me to speak here?" Amara asked directly. "To convince your board." A small smile touched his lips. "Partly, but mostly because your voice deserves to be heard." He hesitated, then added, "Would you walk with me? There's something I'd like to show you." Curiosity overcame her lingering reservations. They left the conference center and walked through Barcelona's streets until they reached a small, sunlit plaza where a group of children were gathered around what appeared to be a miniature olive grove and raised planters. "What is this?" Amara asked. "The first of what we hope will be many urban agricultural education centers," Nicholas explained, his voice warm with pride, "teaching city children about farming, sustainability, and their connection to the land." He turned to face her directly. "Your research helped make it possible, demonstrating that olive cultivation could be adapted to limited water and space." "You've been busy," Amara observed, watching as an instructor showed the children how to check soil moisture. "I've been trying to bridge worlds," he corrected. "The corporate resources of Santiago Agronomics with the wisdom of traditional farming, urban education with rural preservation." He paused, his eyes meeting hers, the scientific with the personal. The implication hung between them, weighted with possibility. "I'm still not sure I can trust you," Amara admitted. "You kept the truth from me for weeks." "I kept my name from you," Nicholas countered gently. "But everything else, my love for the land, my concern for the farmers, my admiration for your work and your passion, that was all true." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small cloth bag, offering it to her. Inside, Amara found an olive pit, smooth and brown. "What's this?" "A 1,000-year-old variety, from the tree where we shared lunch that first day," he explained. "It can grow in almost any condition, adapt to changing environments, survive droughts and storms." His voice softened. "Like all enduring things, it knows how to bend without breaking." Amara closed her fingers around the seed, feeling its solid potential against her palm. "Are you asking me to plant this somewhere?" "I'm asking if we could plant it together," Nicholas replied. "Not as a researcher and subject, or corporation and consultant, but as partners." He gestured to the children learning about agriculture in the heart of the city. This is just the beginning, where we could do so much more, combining your science with my resources. Partners, Amara repeated thoughtfully. Professional partners. Nicholas's gaze held steady. I'd hope for more than that, eventually. But I understand if you need time. Amara looked down at the seed in her hand, a small thing containing centuries of resilience and adaptation. Like the relationship between them, it held potential that would require patience, trust, and nurturing to fully realize. I think, she said carefully, that the best cultivation starts with understanding the conditions necessary for growth. She met his eyes. Professional partners first. The rest, we'll see what takes root. Nicholas's smile bloomed slowly, reaching his eyes. Olive trees can live for thousands of years, he said. I can be patient. As they stood together in the dappled sunlight, surrounded by children learning to care for tiny olive saplings, Amara felt something settle into place within her, a recognition that sometimes the most important discoveries weren't found in soil samples or data points, but in the unexpected connections between seemingly separate worlds. She opened her palm, offering the seed back to him. Then let's plant it together and see what grows. The ancient olive pit passed between their hands, a promise, a beginning, a bridge between worlds that perhaps weren't so different after all.